We're standing 154 candidates in these elections. If you all vote for them, I might be the Prime Minister in the 5th of July. But if it happens, I warn you, there will be dark days coming for the people of Britain and for the people of the world. So you need to ask yourself this. Who, if Starmer is the Prime Minister, would be the best leader of the opposition? Do you think Starmer would enjoy facing me every day in the House of Commons? Because that's what we can achieve. But we can only achieve it if we elect MPs like Halima Khan, like the other Workers' Party candidates, many of them here, who are standing across London, and independents like Councillor Sophia Naqvi, who's in the audience. We must get her in the next door constituency. We have to vote smart. If, as the polls show, most people agree with me that Starmer and Sunak are two cheeks of the same arse, why would you vote for an arse when you can vote for someone who'll stand up for you, who'll be an MP to be proud of? But if you don't vote that way, you won't get that. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. Neglect, contempt, and hatred that remains secret until a whistleblower like Halima Khan tells the story and reveals it to the general public. So all of you know, and you must tell everybody you know, that in this constituency there's only one candidate worthy of your support. There's only one candidate that's going to sit next to me in Parliament and allow me to do the job I think you know I can do, and that Starmer fears that I can do. That's what you have to do. Halima Khan on the 4th of July.
Thank you so much, George. And from the giants of today to the proto-Goliaths of tomorrow, it is incredible enthusiasm and honour that I'm presented and present before you today to introduce a remarkable candidate, Halima Khan, who is standing for the Workers' Party. Halima is a beacon of dedication and passion, driven by commitment to serve the community both here and on the global stage. Halima's journey is one of resilience and determination. Growing up in a working-class neighbourhood, she saw firsthand the struggles faced by many families, the kind of challenges that can only be understood by living them. Her experiences have fueled her resolve to fight for tomorrow for all of us. An advocate for equality and justice, Halima has worked tirelessly at both the grassroots and national level. She is no stranger to courage and integrity, if you've heard. As a former investigations and governance officer under both Corbyn and Starmer, she dared to expose the deep-seated corruption within the Labour Party, unveiling the flaws in their anti-Semitism process, and a disturbing hierarchy of racism later confirmed by Martin Ford Casey in his report. She highlighted the mass surveillance issues in Europe. Her efforts to bring about change have not gone unnoticed, and her voice has grown from a local whisper to a national dialogue. Today, as the Workers' Party candidate, Halima stands ready to take this fight to Parliament to ensure that your voices are not just heard, but acted upon. She's not just a candidate. She's a champion for our rights, our values, and our future. So please, join me in welcoming, with hopeful hearts and open arms, a true servant of the people, Halima Khan.
Thank you everybody. First and foremost, thank you for coming on, and it's very difficult to follow speeches after, obviously, Sir George Galloway. Thank you for everything that you've said. It's actually an absolute honour to actually even be able to come and speak to you. Since whistleblowing, I've been blackballed and, put into a box of silencing, actually, as any other person that's dared to whistleblow would be aware of. But I'd like to begin with my journey in politics. So in 2019, I applied, actually it was the end of 2018, I applied for the role as an investigations and governance officer for the Labour Party. Now, I had no prior political education or understanding of politics. I was the classic apathetic voter, traumatized by the Blair years. So as a child, when I was just a brown kid at school, to becoming a terrorist overnight, or being perceived as a terrorist overnight, Tony Blair's rule is something that's traumatized me since I was a child, and that's what caused voter apathy throughout my life. Now, when I was on my way to the interview for the job role, I was Googling how do you become an MP, how do you become Prime Minister, and all of that. But when I went into the interview, I was asked if I was a Labour member. Now, my response was, I'm not here because I believe in the Labour Party or I believe in Corbyn. I'm here to stop another Tony Blair. Now, that was on my interview. Did I know that it was used So when I started from day one, I realized what I assumed that I was applying for, to challenge corruption with the Labour Party and investigate members in the Labour Party for corruption, it ended up being something completely different. From day one, I was instructed to mass surveil individuals' social profiles, social media profiles, and go through and find evidence and type in buzzwords such as Palestine. So even if you had mentioned Palestine, you were on our radar. Now, I knew then that I had something, that I'm there for a reason, and I'm going to have a wall of challenges, because the moment I walked in, I saw that the camp was already split. Now, what's not common knowledge is that the Labour left is absolutely fragmented. They're not together, and they worked against each other as much as the Labour right worked against them. It was absolute chaos, and what I did was I held my cards close to my chest, and I monitored, and I measured who the people are in the room with me. Now, I didn't study politics, as I said, but I studied neuroscience. So for me, when I met these politicians, I was assessing who's a narcissist and who's an empath, and the majority of them are narcissists and sociopaths. So, one of the few people was actually somebody who sat right next to me that I had the privilege and honor of sitting with, who is a true empath and is a powerful voice for us all. Now, when I fast forward to after Jeremy Corbyn had lost the election and Keir Starmer came in, one of the first things that Keir Starmer did was recruit an Israeli spy as a social listener. Now, nobody was allowed to ask what that role was. What is your purpose here? Because then you would be perceived as anti-Semitic. So what I did was, in my role, because I had two roles, I was also chair of the BME network, I made sure everyone in Keir Starmer's office did Islamophobia training. And I was there watching the reactions. So obviously when you do Islamophobia training, the question of Palestine comes up. And this man's face was like a stone of rock, but it gave me so much pleasure to see. So after we had obviously the recruitment of the spy, not long after that, we had the 2021 war on Gaza. Now, I couldn't understand why at that time I felt a suffocation that I had never felt before in my life. Now, we've seen things that happen in Yemen, Syria, and Libya, and all over the world. But at that time, it was so pivotal, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't separate myself from the cause. But at the same time, the 2021 war on Gaza, I was handed over the dossier of NUM, which essentially was mass surveillance of members of NUM. Now, I have my brother Mehmood Mirza here and Tahir Mirza, who were victims of this spy dossier, essentially. Now, in that dossier, if you go home and continue to watch the Labour files, you will see that Brother Mahmood's family were being followed. As he was dropping his children to school, they were being followed. So when I saw this level of data from an anonymous source, where we couldn't then tie down any kind of, who actually wrote this, but there was a number of signatories on there that are prominent Labour politicians. Now, these are the issues that I'm here standing here in Newham for, and for Tower Hamlets too. Now, what I want for Newham is what I have, the pride to say that Tower Hamlets have been liberated by Aspire. So what I want to do is support Newham independence to liberate Newham from Labour control. When I came across the dossier, there was two pivotal moments. Now, when as George quite rightly said, that Salma is just Blairism 2.0, the first thing that Salma did was also appoint a new General Secretary. He goes by the name of David Evans. Now, David Evans was the Assistant General Secretary for Tony Blair. So when we saw all these relics being dragged in within the first few weeks, I knew what I had said in my interview is going to come to fruition at some point, that I had to challenge what was going on. And unfortunately, when I was working under the left, when I was trying to bring forward cases of Islamophobia and anti-black racism, I kept being told the same thing, that anti-Semitism is the priority. If we take focus on Islamophobia and anti-black racism, it may be perceived as minimizing anti-Semitism. Now, I thought that is the hierarchy of racism. That is the definition of a hierarchy of racism. So one of the main things that I wanted to achieve was to make sure that there's a definition for anti-black racism and Islamophobia that mirrors the anti-Semitism definition. Now, obviously, then I became a problem figure because I was actually trying to change the party. So, when individuals in the Labour Party say that, we should stay and we should change from within, I came from the machine, which is the dark, shadowy figures, which is in the governance and legal unit. Now, my unit and the source of power my unit had was we were the unit suspending MPs. It was in my unit where Jeremy Corbyn was suspended and investigated, and a number of MPs were investigated. But in that, there was a list of protected MPs, which we were not allowed to investigate. Now, I'm sure everybody in the room can come to the conclusion of which MPs they are, and one of them is the director of Hope Not Hate, who has now become a baroness in the House of Lords because of Starmer. Now, another interesting thing that George mentioned was the RCP. So the RCP stood a candidate against George in 1992, was it, he said? In 1992, and it was the only candidacy that they had stood, and it was against George in 1992. In 2024, they have only stood one candidate in the entire nation, and it's against me. So that means I'm doing something right if I'm there on the same playing field as George. So, I take that as a badge of honour as well, because then it means that me standing was doing the absolute right thing. Now, when it came down to my employment tribunal and the Labour files releasing and me continuing on the battle, the reason why I continued on the battle, I can't afford legal representation, but I need to take the Labour Party to court with every avenue I have. Now, what they were trying to push to do was to get me to sign a settlement. And there are a number of individuals who are standing on the Palestine ticket as independents who are also trying to get me to take a settlement. So I literally turned around and I said I can never take blood money in exchange for my silence. So I decided to legally represent myself, and I have been, and I haven't asked anybody for any crowdfunding because my personal morals are we are all struggling in a cost of living crisis. But even if we don't have money even if we don't have the avenues to go seek legal justice, if I can stand and show you that I'm going to take them to court even by myself, and take the party that claims to be the party of the working class and be a worker from that party and take them to court and prove that they are in the wrong, then that's a powerful statement for all of us. Into Palestine because I felt very alone after whistleblowing, and taking on the Labour Party on my own is a very big struggle. So I went back to Palestine in September last year for a friend's wedding, and I decided that I was going to fight my legal case from Palestine. So I was inside Palestine fighting the Labour Party, and why I decided to stay there was because it's very difficult to go against the machine. And for me, just when I felt like I was ready to give up, I needed to re-energize my fight and live in apartheid with the Palestinians, to remind myself exactly why I'm taking the court in every avenue, and I'll fight them in every avenue. Whether you elect me or not, I will continue fighting, and I'll continue to fight for the people of Newham. And that's a big part of my employment case. So when the war broke out on October the 7th, I had to take a decision, and it was a very easy decision, to be honest. I didn't find it very difficult at all to decide to stay. When I saw the images of Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem being completely locked down, the reality on the ground was Masjid Al-Aqsa was blocked off and barricaded, and the only people that could enter Al-Aqsa were the elderly above the age of 70. And the images of all people fleeing to the airports struck a chord with me that who is there to protect the people of Jerusalem? Because there are no eyes on Jerusalem. And people in Jerusalem, and especially the old cities surrounding Al-Aqsa Masjid, were very highly monitored. At every gate there's soldiers who are, harassing everybody that walks past. I was harassed several times. And for me, the most important thing was staying there in solidarity. I was there for a reason and had to stay for a reason. So I decided to stay to the end of my visa. And my plan was to go to Jordan for a week and then come back into Palestine, because I couldn't bear to see the politicians that I had worked with. I couldn't trust myself being around them, and if I could actually have the patience to stay silent and not just rip raw and expose every one of them one by one, which then would have brought me to legal issues. So for me, when I was planning to go back into Palestine, it was my friends who lived by Al-Aqsa, who lived in Jerusalem, in the heart of Palestine, who told me, go back and fight for us. You were our witness. You were a witness of October the 7th. Go and tell our story, fight for your people and fight for us. Now, as George said, Starmer is one of the most dangerous politicians that are coming. And I saw that from a mile away from when I was inside the Labour Party. Now, I saw how quickly things turned overnight, from October the 6th to October the 7th. On October the 6th, I was with my friends in a studio. We were just trying to make some music, and then the next day, I couldn't see my friends anymore. We were all separated. So what happened in the West Bank was each city in the West Bank became like Gaza. So they were all trapped. So we couldn't move between cities because the settlers had come in. And they were blocking up all the roads and preventing anyone going from city to city. Now, with my position as a whistleblower of the Labour Party, whistle blew on the Zionist mechanisms within the Labour Party, as well as being affiliated with Al Jazeera, I was in a very precarious situation. But again, my belief in Allah, my belief in my faith, meant that I would be okay, and if they take me there, then what an honor. So I decided to move by Jerusalem and stay there. So why I'm here today, and why I believe that you should vote for me, and actually why I need you. I need you all, and you also need my voice in representation, is what can I do for you? Now, the three roles that an MP has is first, to act in the national interest. Now, I've already done that. I've whistled against the Labour Party, the incoming government, in the national interest. The second is to act on behalf of your constituents. Again, I've done that, and I've delivered for my constituents by holding New and Labour to account. And the third is on behalf of the party. Now, what we're seeing now, how did we get to this stage where there's so many disillusioned voters, as George said, where they're two sides of the same butt cheeks, or the same buttocks rather. How did we get here? We got here because the establishment relies on voter apathy. I was in the room when they were planning this election, when it was called the Organised to Win 2024 campaign. Their entire focus was on the Northern Wall, and everything else, every other ethnic minority issue was considered a culture war, and it was open conversation that we just have to show them we're doing something. Now, I am here today because on October the 7th, I saw the truth. Inside the Labour Party, I saw the truth. And I'm here today standing because you need a politician that will tell you the truth. And as Jesus said, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. Thank you.
Bravo.